McCarthy has been able to basically kick Schiff and Swalwell off of the Intelligence Committee. This is a select committee. So in other words, the Speaker of the House selects who's going to be on this committee. They've got to do a certain amount based upon the split in the House, but who it will sit on it, the Speaker has the ability to determine. However, for the Foreign Relations Committee, this is one where it's not a select committee, and there must be a vote to kick someone off. Democrats are attempting to whip votes in favor of keeping Ilhan Omar on the committee. And it sounds like Democrats are basically all on board, which is, no small thing, because there are a lot of virulent Israel supporters in the Democratic caucus who are adamant that there be no criticism of Israel, and probably also not terribly excited by Ilhan Omar being a Muslim woman. And yet they're going to support her bid to be on this committee. So good for them. I don't want to go overboard with that, but good for them. And
I think there's certain votes Ilhan has taken recently that are maybe confusing from a left foreign policy perspective that I think maybe explain how she got some of these Democrats on board with getting her back in this situation.
It's possible. I mean, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that, this is you've got 212 or 11 colleagues, and if you want to build power within a caucus, the way you build power is sometimes by giving what is not necessarily hugely important to you in that moment, or hugely, you got to pick what battles you fight. That's basically what it comes down to.
No one to hold them.
And people can take issue with which battles, she's fought or not. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, a valuable voice on the Foreign Relations Committee, in my estimation. And we will see if there are any Republican defections. And in some ways, it's going to be an interesting litmus test for those who think that there's that this is possible in the future. But here is Kevin McCarthy, and I'm of two minds here. One is that he's an idiot and doesn't really know how to address the press whatsoever, and doesn't seem to realize what questions he's going to get. Or, and maybe these aren't mutually exclusive, he also knows that he's only playing to 48% of the country, 47% of the country. And that is the Republican Party, the conservative base. And they like somebody who won't answer questions to the press, period.
Intel committee. Is Santos on the Intel committee? Am I allowing Schiff to be on other committees? Go right ahead.
Respectfully, thank you. Because you have direct power over who goes on the intelligence committee, you also will be able to raise for your full House, taking off other Democrats, perhaps Representative Omar. But you have said that lying to us is something that means you should be removed from the intelligence committee. But why is it not a factor?
Well, let me just reiterate what the reporter is saying, because you can't quite hear it. Understand, McCarthy only has unilateral power to keep people off of a select committee, and that's in the Intel committee. And he's saying, I'm not keeping Schiff and Swalwell off of other committees, because he doesn't have unilateral power to do that. And Ilhan Omar is going to be a tougher fight than Schiff and Swalwell, because she is a Muslim woman, and much easier for the Republicans to vote against her, frankly, and seem, reasonable. But the reporter is saying, you said the reason why you're keeping Swalwell and Schiff off of those committees is because they're liars. So if lying is really your thing, you could definitely keep Santos off a committee, because you're in charge of his caucus. And so Santos is I mean, he's certainly not the only liar, but he's the most flagrant
the most
liar. Like,
documented.
you have Republicans in his home district who are chairing the Republican Party in his district saying he's a pathological liar. And so McCarthy has to answer that question. It never occurred to him, apparently, that if I set up the standard liar, what am I going to do about Santos, who's like literally like a con man? I mean, if he's even rational enough to be a con man, but go ahead.
Man who should not be on committees, something you do have power over.
He's got elected by his district, so...
Answer to my question. Why is lying?
Okay, let me be very clear and respectful to you. You ask me a question. When I answer it, it's the answer to your question. You don't get to determine whether I answer your question or not, okay? In all respect. Thank you. No, let's answer her question. You just raised a question. I'm going to be very clear with you. The Intel Committee is different. You know why? Because what happens in the Intel Committee, you don't know. What happens in the Intel Committee, although the secrets are going on in the world, other members of Congress don't know. What did Adam Schiff do as the chairman of the Intel Committee? What Adam Schiff did, use his power as a chairman and lie to the American public. Even the Inspector General said it. When Devin Nunes put out a memo, he said it was false. When we had a laptop, he used it before an election to be politics and say that it was false and said it was the Russians. When he knew different, when he knew the intel, if you talk to John Radcliffe, DNI, he came out ahead of time and says there's no intel to prove that, and he used his position as chairman, knowing he has information the rest of America does not, and lied to the American public.
Well, wait a second. I don't understand how Radcliffe came out beforehand and said and announced this about information that Schiff had that they didn't have. How did Radcliffe have that information and announce it to the public? I mean, the problem that McCarthy is having is that he didn't do a narrow situation. Like he wanted to come out because he knows that these guys are loathed by the right wing because of their leading the charge on impeachment. And so he made it about them. And then when reporters start going like, well, wait a second, don't you claim that you weren't knocking people off of committees like Nancy Pelosi did? Well, and then it's a principle. And then he had to articulate the principle, and he had never developed the principle. That's the problem.
Should have kept it on the individual level, the petty level.
Exactly. I mean, frankly, I don't care about Schiff or Swalwell being on the Intel Committee. I don't feel strongly about that. I'm more concerned about Ilhan Omar being on Foreign Relations, and I don't know what McCarthy's justification for that is. Other than the fact that we know that you're a woman of color and particularly Muslim, and you're outspoken, and
a lot of questions.
Gotta be careful.
Can't be too careful about this stuff.
Why would we put someone who's
Let me say something very clear.
who was from foreign relations?
Foreign having relations with itself? I don't think so.
Doesn't make sense. We'll get to Krista Brown and Mo Tatzik in just a moment to talk about Ticketmaster. God, what a horrible company, and an important sort of a question of antitrust. And these things, understand, one antitrust action begets others. That's why this stuff is so important.